Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Vegan Gym Live. I'm your host, Dr. Daphne Bascom, and I am here today with a special episode that I have been waiting to share with you for many months. I'm going to dispense with a lot of the formalities of the introductions because I've been talking about Chef AJ on our community for several weeks, but I want to introduce you to an amazing human, an amazing chef, and our guest for tonight, Chef AJ. Chef AJ, welcome to the Vegan Gym Live.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. How are you? I'm not in a bed. I'm going to do this standing.
Well, I appreciate you allowing me to do this from my bed, but
I'm just kidding. This is the first. That shows dedication. Dedication, let me tell you.
I got the book sent to the hospital so I could make sure that I went through all the recipes again. Chef AJ, we're honored to have you because
thank you.
One of the things that I strongly believe in is enjoying life, enjoying food, but also making sure that we do so in a way that respects our bodies and respects the environment. And I've been following you for years. I've got all your books. And I am excited to have you here today to share a little bit about Sweet Indulgence and to share with our community some of the amazing recipes that you're going to demo live today.
Well, thank you so much. And hi, everybody. So I have a new book that just came out last month. It's called Sweet Indulgence. It's 157 guilt-free treats sweetened naturally with fruit. Everything is not just vegan, but it's plant exclusive. It's free of oil, sugar, and salt. And actually only 2 of the recipes have flour. So I'm going to be demonstrating, at least 3 of the recipes today and more if we have time. And would you like me to get started right away with the demo?
Absolutely.
Okay, so everybody always says, what is your favorite recipe in the book? And so, I don't know if I have a favorite per se, but I can tell you the one that I make the most. And there's several reasons. One, because it's delicious, but also because it's one of the easiest and it only makes about 6 to 8 cookies. And I don't have a problem having lots of dessert around the house, but I'm limited in my refrigerator and freezer space, and I just worry that it's going to go bad because, we eat dessert probably every day. And when I say we eat dessert, it doesn't mean we're eating like a hot fudge sundae or, a huge piece of cake every day, but something sweet usually after a meal. And this is perfect because it takes very little time to make. It takes 5 minutes to bake in the oven. And the truth is, you don't have to bake it if you don't want. I'll explain that as we get through the recipe. And it makes a small amount. And you might remember these if you have kids or if you were a kid. These are called either jam print or thumbprint cookies. Mm-hmm. And so that's on page 59. And what's fun about these is that you can make them any flavor. So, if you have lots of kids, we always have fruit sweetened jam in our house. My favorite flavor is raspberry, followed by strawberry. But my husband eats a peanut butter or an almond butter jelly and jelly sandwich every day for lunch. So we have pretty much every single flavor of fruit sweetened jam. Now, you can make your own. There's actually a recipe in my book for chia jam. So if you don't want to buy a processed product or a commercial product, it's really easy to make your own chia jam. You take fruit, like frozen fruit, for example, and you defrost it and you add your chia seeds. Sometimes you need to add a little sweetener, and I use only dates, the whole fruit, and nothing but the whole fruit. Maybe you need a little lemon juice, but it's really easy to make your own. But these fruit sweetened ones have been around for so long, and they're so common now. You can get them at Walmart, the 99-cent store. They're basically fruit and some kind of juice, like maybe white grape juice and fruit pectin. And they're superbly sweet. And so I have my jam here. And when I make these sometimes for, larger groups, and actually I'm going to a potluck Sunday and that's going to be a larger group, I'll take different flavors. And that way it'll look really pretty on the tray because the raspberry will be red, the apricot jam will be kind of orange, the blueberry will be blue, and it looks just kind of pretty having all those different colors. It only has 4 ingredients. And the truth is, most of the recipes in my book have 7 ingredients or fewer. Easy to find ingredients. I wanted to make sure that everything was available at your local Walmart if that's the only store you have. Maybe not the exact brand that I'm using is available at Walmart, but you'll get something that you can make every recipe in the book with. So, oops, I have the wrong. Oh, I made a little mistake in my mise en place. Excuse me. Let me just move this cinnamon over to this recipe. It don't matter if there's a little cinnamon in here. There we go. And by the way, if you're not familiar with the term mise en place, it's a French word that means everything in its place. And I think that's one of the most important things that you can do if you are somebody that makes your own food, whether it's batch cooking or just even cooking dinner. They teach you that the first day of culinary school, mise en place, in its place. And so instead of me running to the pantry, the cupboard, every time I need an ingredient, I get everything out in advance and I have it measured in advance. And I do that even if I'm only making one recipe for dinner. And the truth is, I almost didn't have time to mise en place today because we have a dear 100-year-old vegan doctor that fell and he's in the hospital. He's fine. He had hip surgery. And it just took a little longer to visit him and get home. And I thought, well, I'll do my measuring in real time. But the truth is, for these 3 recipes, it took maybe about 12 minutes maybe to mise en place, maybe less. So we're going to start with oats. Now, you can interchange in almost all the recipes in the book, if you don't like oats or can't have oats, nuts. They're interchangeable in many of these recipes, at least recipes that are more like cookie and crust-like. I use oats a lot because I do a lot of teaching for programs like the McDougall program, where they are eating lower fat and lower calorie density. But if you want to put nuts in instead, you can. But oats are actually quite tasty. And, oats aren't really low fat when you think about it. They're lower in fat than nuts. But compared to other grains like rice that have maybe 1% of their calories from fat, oats have about 20. So they're still hearty enough and delicious enough. So if you're allergic to nuts or aren't using nuts, you can use oats. And if you want more calories and fat, you can use nuts. But I prefer to use oats for me because I follow the principles of calorie density, and the lower the calorie density, the more I can eat. I eat like a little piggy. And it's funny because I used to weigh 60 pounds more. And I find when following the principles of calorie density, like outlined in Dr. Dean Ornish's book, Eat More, Weigh Less, I can eat twice as much food now, but still take in half as many calories. And this is one way you can do that. So I have my oats. These are gluten-free oats, but if you're not gluten-free, just use any oats you want, but use the rolled oats, not the steel cut or the oat groat in these recipes. Rolled oats are actually quite processed, believe it or not. Brenda Davis talks about the hierarchy of grains, and this is actually the 3rd incarnation of oat. We have the oat groat, which is the whole grain, which kind of looks like rice and is very delicious and toothsome, but most people don't eat that. They eat the next incarnation, which is the steel cut oat, where they cut the oat groat in half. So it's a little more processed, and this is much more processed because it's flattened, steamed, and flattened again. And so if I were to rub this in my finger, it would turn to flour. And you're going to see in a future recipe in this presentation what I mean by that. I don't even have to grind oats in a recipe where I need oat flour because they dissipate. They're very processed. Not that that's a bad thing, but I'm just saying you don't always have to go and buy oat flour or make oat flour because it will do that. So I'm going to put the oats with my pure vanilla bean powder in the food processor that's dry and fitted with the S-blade. And I'm going to just process it into a crumb-like consistency. And sometimes I just put the dates in right away because I actually like the toothsomeness. But if you want it a little bit less, seeing the oat, you're just going to process it for a little bit.
And Chef AJ, in your book, you actually very clearly break up as part of the table of contents what different types of equipment people need. So whether they need a food processor, a blender, those things are clearly called out.
Right. And if you were talking to me, I didn't hear it when it was on, but I'm happy to answer the question. So this is just more kind of like a breadcrumb consistency. You don't want to, you can process it to an oat flour, but for that, you'd probably use a Vitamix because this won't get it all the way there. And then I have my pitted dates. They're supposed to be pitted. The bag says pitted, but sometimes they have pits. So it's a good idea if you have the time to either cut them in half or kind of squeeze each one, because a pit could damage your blade. But the food processor always tells you if there's a pit because you'll see it just won't process. I'm using a Breville. I have no affiliation to that company. I just think it's a very good food processor because it's big and powerful. So my motto's always been get the biggest and best you can afford. So I'm just going to place the dates in there. And I'm going to let the food processor run until it starts to slow down. You just kind of know. You see that it slows down. A ball starts to form. It could take about a minute. check for a pit because it seemed to be moving a little more slowly than it usually does.
And Chef AJ, while you're checking your blade, had a good question. Is there a favorite type of date that you're using? Is it Deglet date?
Yes, and there was a very small pit. So if I'm going to eat a date, I'm going to eat something called the Bahri date, Bahri, because that tastes like candy. All dates taste like candy, but that tastes specifically like a candy from my childhood called the Kraft Caramel. But for the most of the recipes in the book, with the exception of the date shake that I say medjool date specifically, I use the Deglet Noor because one, they're a little bit drier. And in this case, with this recipe, if you weren't going to bake it, you want that dryness. The medjools they're wonderful, they're moist, but they can be really sticky. Also, they're more cost effective. If you have a Costco near you, most Costco's online or in the store sell organic Deglet Noor dates. They're $2.69 a pound. Sometimes medjool dates are 3, 4, 5 times as expensive. So since dates are my only sweetener, I go with the most cost-effective choice. So I got that little pit up, and I'm going to just process hopefully for about another 30 seconds.
And for those of you in the community, if you look at your Momentum Weekly, we actually did a great overview on all the different types of dates.
I love dates. So there's the other half of the pit. You can kind of tell when there's a pit. See, what happens is when you don't take time on the front end, you end up spending more time on the back end. So actually it cut the pit in half. So hopefully third time is a charm.
And while we're waiting for this to mix up, agree 100%. If you have not tried any of these recipes, they are so easy to make. I've made these thumbprint cookies. I've made several of the recipes in Chef AJ's book, and I'm a very simple cook. These are quick, easy, and definitely can fit into your meal prep if you prepare them and they fit into your meal plan. So I would encourage you to give these a try.
Okay, so guess what? It's almost ready. So what I do is I stop the food processor, I smush a little piece together, and I see if a ball forms. And it's forming, but it's still too crumbly. So there's a couple of things I can do. One, I can just let the food processor run a little longer, which I will do. Or I can just add a few more dates, which I'm going to do, and then process it. So these are not the ones from Costco because I didn't have time to go to Costco yesterday, but these are also very good. These are the Hadley dates. Costco used to sell these in organic tubs, and they're fantastic. The ones that at least my Costco has is this brand called Desert Valley. So let's let it go one more time.
There it goes.
Oh my God. See, this is what happens when I don't take the time to get it. And I'm using that brand because it's getting stuck. I might need a man to come over. Okay, so there we go.
There you go.
One. That is so annoying when that happens, but it always happens when I'm doing a demonstration, never when I'm just cooking for myself or baking for myself.
And I agree with Andrew. Costco dates are amazing. And if you are going to be preparing any of the recipes in the book, I would highly encourage you to buy your dates in bulk. They're a great sweetener for just about everything you like to prepare.
Okay, perfect. So I know it's perfect because it's really starting to slow down, and I can see that it all comes together in a perfect, like ball. If I were to roll it in a ball, and if I break it apart, it's fine. So now I'm going to take the contents of my food processor, and I'm just going to dump it on my nonstick silicone baking mat. If you don't have one of these, you can get these on Amazon. This one I got at QVC. You can certainly just take any baking tray you have with a piece of parchment paper over it or a Silpat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just form this into one mass or a ball. It doesn't have to be a perfect ball. And then I'm going to break it into however many pieces I want for how many cookies. I could take a scoop and do these exact. I could weigh them exact, but I'm not that picky. So I'll first break it into 2, and then I'll break it into 2 again. And then I'll break it into 2 again. It does make 8. Sometimes I make them a little bigger and make 6. So the idea is you want to try to get them roughly the same size. And then once you have your 8 pieces of dough, now you can actually roll them into a ball. Now you can eat these right now. Mm-hmm. They're fine, and they're not that sticky because of using the Deglet Nor. The only reason I like to bake them is because then I can keep them longer. I'm sure that they're going to stay longer in a nice piece of Tupperware. I usually store them in the refrigerator, and I don't like them sticky. Now, if you were a raw foodist like my friend Lissa, you can still make this recipe by making your own chia jam and by using those raw sprouted oats that they now sell at Whole Foods and Sprouts. And instead of baking them, having them uncooked, or make them in a food dehydrator. So the reason I like to bake them, and it's only for 5 minutes, is because it does this really cool thing with the jam. It just kind of makes it kind of like glossy, and I love what it does to the jam when you bake it rather than having it unbaked. But taste is roughly the same. So one of these balls is bigger than the other, so I can easily remedy that once I get most of them out. If you've got kids, this would be the fun part to get them involved in. It's kind of like working with Play-Doh, because they can either stick their thumbs in it to make the little indentation, or I actually like to make the indentation bigger because I like more jam or as much jam than cookie. You can see these are different sizes, so I can just take a little bit from the biggest one and add it here to try to get them a little more even. And then what I'm going to do is after they're all in balls, I'm just going to press them down. Now I can just bake them like this. This is like my snickerdoodle recipe, but without the cinnamon. But I want to make little edges so that I can place the jam in there, because that's the fun part. And when I press it down, I go the other way just to make sure it doesn't stick. You will find if you use medjool dates in general, they're much stickier, and I find a little bit harder to work with, although they are quite delicious. So we're just going to press them all down. I like to press them a little bit wider because I like to get a big lip so I can have a big area for the jam. And then I'll build the lip up with using my forefingers and my thumb. I'm just going to get that up like this. And then I'll make a little, kind of like a bird's nest. So I have a nice big area to place the jam before baking. And that's kind of do it. So yeah, if you want to use like almond flour or almonds instead of oats, you can certainly do that. That would be yummy. Again, you can take all the time you want to make it as perfect as you want, or just give it a more rustic look. That's kind of what I usually do.
Rustic is good.
That's what I like. I'm not, I worked at a restaurant and I made the desserts. There was somebody that just plated them, and, they do a beautiful job with the sauces and the lines and the writing with the chocolate. But, I just want it to taste good. I don't mind if it looks good, but not at the expense of tasting good. So I just don't have the time to always make it absolutely perfect. But, once the jam's in there, you'll see it'll still look pretty, even if there is, these don't look pretty right now. You could fill these with all sorts of things. We had some leftover cranberry relish, and I thought, actually, you know what? Do we still have the cranberry relish in the fridge? Get it for me, because I'm going to put one in there and bake it. I bet my husband would really like that because he loves cranberry relish. We're going to do something never been done before. Maybe it has. I've never done it before. Thanks. I'm going to make one of them I have this leftover cranberry relish, and I'm going to fill one of the cookies with it. And I think he's going to like it the best because he loves things that are tart. So
a great suggestion going into the holidays too.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, always find ways to reuse things, you know. Yeah, I mean, I thought about filling these with a pumpkin mousse too. Like whatever I have, you can fill them with anything. Why not? 2 more to go, and yeah, some are bigger. If the more you press out the sides, the bigger it'll get. But I like the jam to cookie ratio. I really like a lot of jam, and even when I'm eating them, sometimes I'm getting more jam out of the fridge because I want more jam. It's my favorite part. Okay. What else could you fill these with that would be good, but that you could also bake?
Jam, mousse.
Yeah, mousses for sure. I think, what else could go? I was going to say chia pudding. I just worry, though, the chia seeds don't bake well in that form. So what else would go in here? I'll think about it and I'll let you know. Okay, one more.
I think the great point is that you can be creative.
Yeah. Well, that's the funnest part is I like making stuff up. I like making it sometimes more than I like eating it, like figuring out a recipe. That's like the fun part for me. Okay, so we got them all. Let's see how much. Get the big one for the. So then take your jam with a spoon. See if this is raspberry. Oh, yeah, raspberry. Raspberry and strawberry look an awful lot alike, but it will bake up a little darker and a little glossier. So we'll fill our little indentations with our jam. Whole Foods actually has chia jam, at least my Whole Foods, that are literally just chia seeds and fruit. So that everybody has gotten the memo. Okay, that's the biggest one, so I'll put the relish in there. And I do tend to overstuff it, even though sometimes it bakes out of the cookie. I don't care. I'm using, look at this. I'm using almost a half a jar for just, for the cookies. There we go.
And for anyone who dialed in late, Chef AJ also has a recipe in her cookbook on how to make your own jam.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the fact that this uses pectin sometimes gives it more of that, a little bit more, I don't know what word I'm looking for.
The shiny.
Than the chia seeds. Yeah, the shininess and the texture. And so this is the leftover cranberry relish I had in the refrigerator. So I'm just going to bake one up like that. And we'll see how that goes. That'll be fun. That's my husband's for dessert tonight. There we go. All right, I'm just going to place this in I didn't preheat the oven, but it's going to be at 350 for 5 minutes. I'll be right back.
Okay. So just see how quick and easy that was. And I completely agree with Chef AJ. Getting your kids involved would be awesome.
All right, just washing my hands, and then we're going to go on to the next recipe. And these are the cinnamon vanilla bliss balls. Very easy to make. Again, only 4 ingredients. We have nuts, we have cinnamon, we have vanilla bean powder, and we have dates. So it's very similar process like we just did with the oats, but for some reason, nuts process a lot faster into the ball form. And so I'm just use whatever kind of cinnamon you like. I like the cassia the best, the Saigon cassia. It tastes better to me. This is from a lovely local brand of non-irradiated spices made in jars in small batches called Local Spicery. But use whatever cinnamon you like. Just make sure it's fresh. Sometimes people buy those bulk things at Sam's Club, and that's great, but they're there for years. So it's not that they will hurt you if they're not fresh. They just won't be as potent. And with vanilla bean powder, it's different than vanilla powder. Vanilla bean powder is dark brown. It's the ground up vanilla beans. Vanilla powder is white, and that has dextrose or maltodextrin. And so that is a processed product, and it probably has sugar, and it's different. It doesn't have the pure vanilla flavor. In the book, I'll show you what I'm making, actually, because I got the book right here. So I showed you the thumbprint cookies. So the cinnamon vanilla bliss balls, this is kind of what they look like. when you take a bite out of them. And in the book, it calls for almonds. I did not have any almonds on hand, and that's okay, because any nut will work. Any seed would probably work as well. Not flax or chia, but any, like pumpkin seeds or, sesame seeds, any seed that could turn into a butter. Flax and chia, to my knowledge, don't turn into a butter. And so I have measured out my nuts, my vanilla powder, and my cinnamon. Somebody actually brought this recipe to my house recently for a potluck and made it with walnuts instead of almonds. So I know it's very good like that. So we're just going to process this not into a nut butter, but into a breadcrumb consistency. And that was only about 10 seconds. And we have like little
Looks great.
breadcrumbs. And then we're going to add our dates. And even if I squeeze every single one, how much you want to bet there's going to be a pit? Knowing my luck today, but let's hope not. We're going to put these in. And this should process much faster than the ones with the oats. We're just waiting for it to slow down and a ball to form. So basically what I'm making is something you might have heard of called a Larabar. It's basically a date nut confection where she made millions selling her idea to General Foods. I met her at a raw food festival in 2003, the year I graduated culinary school. And at that point, she only had like 3 flavors. I think it was apple, cherry, and banana. Anyway, so basically we're making a Larabar. And so what I've done now with the nuts and what I did a little bit ago with the oats, that can be your crust in almost any dessert. You can just take either of these crusts and place them in a Pyrex, pat them in, fill it with whatever you want, even just fruit, and you can have a dessert in no time. You see, it took much less time with the nuts than the oats. And then I got my little ball. Yes, I can break it in half. And so what I could do is I could roll each one into a ball. And that's really labor intensive. I could get a cookie scoop. I can roll them in more cinnamon. But what I like to do is just press them into a mold. These are like brownie molds, and I have them in squares, and I also have them in hearts. I figure, walnuts, they say, are heart healthy. So I'm just going to press them into this heart-shaped mold. And that's easier for me to do it that way. And then I can be talking to you and answering questions because I don't have to worry about rolling perfectly in a ball. You don't want to overprocess. You don't want to overprocess in general, but especially with nuts, because, even though nuts are healthy, they're still 90% fat and 90% oil. And if you keep processing it, you're going to actually see the oil separate. And it's going to be difficult to fix the recipe at that point, even if you pat it with a paper towel. So you want to be mindful not to just let the food processor run and run. I think I'm going to get 12 out of these. I'm not 100% sure. But, the recipe that I made before and the recipe I'm making now, you can certainly double it. Some of my recipes make so much. So those you might want to have. That little beep is just telling me my oven is now up to 350.
And Chef AJ, a question came up. Are these silicone baking sheets you can buy just anywhere?
So I have not seen them in stores. The one that has the thumbprint cookies on, I got at QVC, and I wish I had bought 1 million of them and given them always for presents. They're my favorite because they have like sides that are very hard that you can actually lift it up. But I have seen them on Amazon, not exactly those, but they do have them. And if they don't, you can always get a Silpat or a silicone baking sheet and do it on any kind of baking sheet. But that was such a great invention. And every now and then I'll just go to QVC and think maybe it's going to come back. And so far it hasn't. What I'm using now, you can get, it's Wilton, and Wilton is a cake decorating company. So sometimes you can find these at a Michael's store or a Joann's and use your coupon. You can certainly get them on Amazon. They're not that expensive. And silicone is oven safe to 450 degrees, but we are not going to be baking these anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And we're just using them as the mold. I like to stick these in the freezer. I tend to like almost everything cold. I just prefer it that way. I don't have to do that, but also that's a great way to store them. And we're having a potluck Sunday, but I think I might serve these Friday night. I do a game party at my house once a month. And this will be a perfect number for the people that we'll get. So I could probably eke out, maybe I'll get lucky 13 out of these. Super easy to make. They'll taste differently with almonds than with walnuts, but they're all good. And we made this recipe up when I was teaching at Rancho La Puerta in Mexico. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but it's the #1 spa in the world. It's been there 70 years. You can eat completely vegan, SOS free if you want there, but it is not a vegan spa. They do now serve a little bit of fish occasionally and some dairy, but they have 40 fitness classes a day. So there's like 7 classes every hour. Any kind of exercise you've ever heard of is offered there on a daily basis. Pickleball, basketball, every kind of water aerobics class, every kind of hike, TRX, Tabata, HIIT, bar classes, every kind of yoga, Pilates. It's unbelievable. And I've been teaching there since 2012, hands-on cooking, but for the last 2 years, they've allowed me to have groups of 30 people. And so now I go with Dr. Ellen Goldhammer, and it is so fun. Our groups for next year are almost filled up, but if you're interested, email help@chefaj.com. We have a few spaces left for the March group, and actually a few in the July group with Dr. Goldhammer. So we have our beautiful little cinnamon vanilla, and not bliss balls, but bliss hearts. And then when it's time and you want to eat it, you just pop it out. And these are great. And not that I really think you need to necessarily portion control, but it's kind of fun to have it like this. And people really like these. So I will stick these in the freezer later, and I want to show you a chocolate recipe because everybody loves chocolate. Let me just rinse my hands. I'm not rinsing my food processor or washing my food processor between recipes. If somebody that I knew was coming with a nut allergy, I would. But the ingredients are just, there's not that much in there, and it's. I'm not going to worry about it. But technically, you might or you might want to. Let me just wipe my counter off a bit here. You always want to have a neat working station. So they say that chocolate is the #1 most craved food. Sometimes they say it's pizza. When you Google it, I've seen it both ways. But chocolate is one of those foods that most people love, and there's ways to eat it that are much more healthful than, a Snickers bar. I actually have a recipe for a pie that tastes just like Snickers in the book that was a favorite of Forks Over Knives, Dr. Matt Letterman. So what we're going to do is we're going to make brownies. So I don't know why I thought vegan gym athletes, you guys wanted like a high protein demo. So I thought of, I'll use nuts, I'll use beans, but they still are wonderful whole food plant-based ingredients regardless. And there's protein in everything. All plants have protein. So what we're going to do first is we are going to make our date paste. Actually, I lied. I do have to rinse my food processor. Gosh, I wish I had another canister because I just realized that when I make the date paste, I'm going to have more than what I'm using for this recipe. And so I don't want these other ingredients in there because then, because I always say date paste can last for a month in your fridge. But if it's I don't want to say the word contaminated because it's not contaminated. But if it has those other things in there, I worry about that. So my cookies are ready. I'm not going to really wash it, like sterilize wash it, but I do want to get the little bits of date and oat off the blade while I do that. So date paste is the basis for most of the recipes in my book, whole dates or date paste. And I've been using dates exclusively since 2003 because I gave up processed sugars on July 6, 2003. And I started using dates as methadone to get off of all the processed sugars. And that's how I created many of the recipes in the book, especially the ones that we did in the restaurant that were a little bit richer and higher calorie density because they were certainly healthier than the previous types of desserts I was eating, including daily Coke Slurpees for breakfast and Dr. Pepper Big Gulps for lunch. And so date paste, you can buy it commercially, but it's usually sold in a very hard brick. And so for my recipes, you need it more like a semi-solid, which I'm going to show you what it looks like and how it is in just a second. And date paste is just dates and liquid. And the liquid that I use most often is water. Occasionally, I'll soak my dates in something else. Like if I'm making a cherry chocolate mousse tart, I might soak the dates in cherry juice. If I'm making an orange chocolate mousse tart, I might soak them in orange juice. Maybe I'll use plant milk, but for the most part, I just use water, and water is free. Now, if you're in a hurry you want to use boiling water because you do need some time to soak the dates to get them soft, to turn them into a puree. If you're really in a hurry, you can make date paste in your pressure cooker with the recipe in the book, which is just genius. The only thing is when you cook them in the pressure cooker, even though it only takes a minute, it comes out darker than if you make it in the food processor. And that's only significant if I'm making a frosting. If I'm trying to make a vanilla frosting, I'll use it made in the food processor because it's going to be a much lighter shade of tan rather than a dark brown. So I soaked these dates earlier in boiling water, and most of the liquid is absorbed. And what's left is this thick syrup. You want to keep that because that's where all the natural sugars of the dates are. So when you're soaking things like nuts or seeds, yes, you want to throw away the water and rinse it. But with dates, you want to keep that. There's many different recipes for date pastes from other chefs, but I recommend if you use the recipes in my book, use my ratio of dates to water so that it will come out exactly. So I'm going to place this in the food processor fitted with the S blade. I mean, just by soaking it in boiling water, it pretty much made date paste by itself. Just, you know, I used to live in Indio, California, in the desert where it would be routinely 122, and you could see the dates falling off the date palm trees and literally making date syrup on the ground. So I do use date syrup in some of the recipes. I don't have a problem with that because I can make date syrup on my own, but I like to use the date paste if I can because it's just, again, it's a little bit more cost effective. So I'm going to be using a silicone baking pan. I'm going to be using a 9-inch square, and I am now going to process. Date paste will thicken as it's chilled, and you can also keep it in the freezer. So I'm just going to take out what I need for this recipe. And then if I have any left, I'll store it in the refrigerator. It's so pretty. You can, you know, if you eat bread or toast, this could be your spread. This is so great for making caramel apples. We have Thanksgiving. Yes, we do have Thanksgiving coming up, but we first have Halloween. So date paste can be the topping for your caramel apples, which are really fun.
And look how easy that was.
Yeah, date paste is so easy to make. It's so beautiful. And it's just, I mean, it's just dates, you know? The commercial date paste is made through an extruder. And so it's much harder than this. Like you can, you know, get it to be softer, but I find it's just a little bit more difficult to work with. So this is what I need for the recipe. I'm going to put that aside. And then I'm going to take what I have here and store it in the fridge. I find that I started with 1 pound of dates, and I find that 1 pound of dates makes approximately 2.5 cups of date paste.
And how long does that usually last you?
Months. As long as you don't cross-contaminate it by like dipping a spoon in there that was in something else. I've literally had it last month. It didn't spoil, but I used it up. But like if you're worried, you can freeze it. It's not a problem to freeze it. So just get that out. And I definitely won't clean the food processor for the brownies because dates are one of the ingredients. So I've got my little extra that I'm sure I can think of something to make with. Okay. And so now I'm going to take my secret ingredient for my brownies. These are called outrageous brownies. And I don't think anybody would know they have beans unless you tell them. Yeah. So this is what they look like. We may not have them baked before the end of this presentation, but once it's cut, this is what it will look like. You just don't want to rush your baked goods and try to get them out of the pan sooner because that's when they break and fall apart. So I'm just going to place my blade back in. I'm going to take 1 can of black beans. If they aren't salt-free, you can just rinse them really well, but you still want to rinse them anyway. And 1 can of beans, a 15-ounce can of beans, is 1.5 cups of cooked beans. So if you want to cook them from scratch, that's what you'll do. And then I'm going to take my non-dairy milk. You can take any unsweetened plant milk of choice. And then I'm going to just process this. And then I'm going to take my date paste back in. Right now, it still smells like beans, but when they're done, you won't taste them, see them, or smell them. Then I'm going to take my rolled oats that I'm not even going to grind into a flour, my unsweetened cocoa powder and pure vanilla bean powder, and a little bit of baking powder and baking soda. You can buy baking powder and baking soda salt-free. It's more difficult to find and probably more expensive. Unless I'm teaching at True North, I don't worry about the little bit of sodium from those products, but I do make sure I get aluminum free. So now I'm going to blend again or process again. Charles. That is, if you have the date paste made, you can have these made in the same amount of time it would take you to open up a box of like a Betty Crocker brownie mix. Oh, this smells so good. It looks so fudgy, and it is so fudgy. And now I'm going to pour this into my pan. With cocoa powder, I get people always quote me like, she always says, get the best you can afford. Well, I mean, why not? I mean, if you want it to taste good, with equipment, I say get the biggest and best you can afford. And the same thing with ingredients. However, Hershey's Dark, it's different than the regular Hershey's Cocoa. I think it's a very fine product. And that's what I'm using right now from Walmart. It's very inexpensive. If I'm making something like this doesn't have so much chocolate in it, like because you're also going to have chocolate chips on this, I might get a really expensive cocoa powder like Valrhona, maybe if I'm doing a mousse, but the Hershey's Dark is fine. I like it not just because it tastes good, but I like the darker cocoa powder because then it's darker. Like raw cocoa powder is very light. I like the way this looks. So I still have quite a bit of the brownie batter on my blade, and it kind of is hard to get off. So if you put it back on the base, just place your top on and just press pulse. Through the magic of centrifugal force, all that batter has come off the blade. And now, especially like think about if you made hummus, look at how much batter was like left in here. That's like a whole brownie. So we're going to get that in there. This is going to bake for 35 minutes. So you probably won't see the finished product at 350. And there's a couple of different things you can do after you get it in the pan, which I'll talk about in 1 second. That smells so good. These freeze well. Everything I've made, well, I've never frozen the thumbprint cookies because there's never enough to freeze, but I know they refrigerate for a long time, but these definitely freeze well. So what you can do is you can get yourself, you can use this spatula or use an offset spatula, or you can do what I call the drop and plop technique. And this will spread it out evenly. I just do drop and plop or up move. You just want to get it in all four corners evenly. Drop and plop. Yep. So that's usually what I do. Okay. So this would be absolutely fine to bake like this. And when I'm teaching for the McDougall program, where I'm not really supposed to use things like nuts or higher fat things, they would accept this in the program because this is low fat, low calorie density for the most part, you know. But if you're making it for company, and I'm making it for the potluck, I like to zhuzh it up a little bit and add a few things on top. So one of the things that's fun to add on top are some dairy-free date sweetened chocolate chips. I find the date sweetened chocolate chips, you probably can get them online. I'm lucky that I can get them at both Sprouts and Whole Foods. And the only ingredients are basically dates and chocolate and I think vanilla. And they're very good. You can also get 100% chocolate chips in many places as well. Now, those won't be sweet. And so what I do is you wouldn't want to use more than a cup, but you just want to sprinkle them on top. And this just makes them even more decadent and more chocolatey. And then I'm also going to sprinkle some nuts on the top. And the nut I'm going to use, probably about a half a cup, is the pistachio because it just complements well with the chocolate. And I've tried this with peanuts. I've tried this with pecans and walnuts. I think the pistachio tastes best, but it also looks the prettiest because it's really the nut that I think is the prettiest color. So I'm probably not even going to use a whole cup because there was a cup left in here. I'm probably going to use half of this bag. But it's just fun to have the chocolate chip in here. If you like, it's completely optional. Boom, boom. And if you are a raw foodist, I do have raw brownie recipes as well in the book. They are unbaked.
And another question came in terms of your preference for which type of date you like to use for your date paste.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned Diglet Nor because they're the most cost effective. I can get them for $2.69 a pound, but you can really use any kind of date. But I tend to go with the Diglet Nor because of the price. So I used a quarter of the bag, so that was about 2 ounces. And now I'm going to add some pistachios just to make it pretty. These are raw pistachios. I've only seen unsalted pistachios that are, actually no, Trader Joe's has raw pistachios. So what am I saying? But roasted would be okay. I just recommend unsalted. And so I'm just going to place a few of these. Oh, these smell amazing in my little choppy tool. Yeah, those are like, pistachios. Just going to, I think this is called a slap chop. And for small jobs like this, it's just easier than getting out a Vitamix or a food processor. The more you slap it, the finer it will be. That's how you get the last few off. And then I'm going to sprinkle those on top. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently press down with my hand, not to touch the batter, but just to get the chips and the nuts, sticking to the batter. And again, you can put more than I did. I mean, you can certainly double the chocolate chips, double the nuts, whatever you like. And I tend to cut these small because for a potluck, there's a lot of people. But I would say you could easily get 16 slices out of this, And so, boom. So I'm going to place this now. Well, wait, first I have to get this cookies out. Then I'll put this in the oven.
Okay.
Yep.
So you all have been asking some great questions. Any other questions for Chef AJ? I can tell you, I've made the thumbprint cookies. I've probably made too many, and I'm not a sweet person, but these cookies are awesome.
Yeah, I would say, they're sweet compared to like eating steamed kale, but I think in general, date sweetened desserts are not as necessarily sickly sweet. So look at the one with the cranberry relish. He's going to have a fun time having that for dessert. So I want these to cool because they'll solidify and they'll be easier to eat and they won't burn your mouth. All right. So now I'm going to place this in the oven. With the brownies, I always want to make sure they cool before I even consider cutting them. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll even, after they're cool, then place them in the refrigerator or the freezer because I find that they're easier to cut that way, even if I don't serve them warm. And that is, I could do more recipes. I always have ingredients. So if you want to see more recipes, I can do more recipes. I can answer questions, whatever you like.
Chef AJ, thank you. This has been, one of the comments, there have been lots of comments coming in, but one of them is that you made 3 amazing things in less time than it takes some of us to make one.
Oh, well, when I'm not answering questions, like I'll go really, really fast. I think my record is 12 in an hour.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
But I have to be able to just like on the kind of Zooms where they can't answer questions or talk, I can go really, really fast. But remember, I worked in a restaurant for 5 years and this was my job. So I don't expect you to go as fast.
And just for some people in our community who may not be familiar, you've mentioned Dr. Goldhammer and True North. Can you just talk a little bit about how you work with that program and what you do there?
Sure. Well, I don't work there anymore, but I do go there every year for my 2-week vacation because I'm a nutcase. One year, I think I'm going to switch it up and go to Disneyland. And we were just at the Plantrician conference, and Disneyland was a mile away. And so many people at the hotel had their ears and I'm like, oh, that sounds like so much fun. But Disneyland is so expensive now. It's about the same price as going to the Plant Nutrition Conference. So I've been affiliated with True North about since 2011. I went there in January as a patient. And then I started working there in the winter months for a program called the Holiday Extravaganza, which unfortunately the last year was 2018. But what True North is a medically supervised, and by that we mean MDs, medically supervised therapeutic water-only fasting center. It's had over 40,000 patients in the last 40 years. Tens of thousands of them have done a medically supervised water fast for all kinds of reasons. Usually it's to reverse some kind of lifestyle disease, like an autoimmune disease, like rheumatoid arthritis or a lupus, or to reverse a diabetes, not type 1, but a type 2, a high blood pressure, obesity, things like that. And there are 3 levels there. There is, of course, the total abstinence from food, which is called water fasting, which out of 13 visits, I only did 1. And it's pretty hard. I mean, not for everybody. I didn't love it. Would I do it again? I don't know. Dr. Goldhammer has a new book out called Can Fasting Save Your Life? And he has a compelling story that even people that are perfectly healthy should consider water fasting once a year, a short fast. We're talking like 5 days, not 40 days, which, believe it or not, they fast people there up to 40 days. And I've worked there seeing people come off a 40-day fast for things like, there was this doctor there named Christina. She was actually a dentist, and she had a head injury, was hit by a car, and she had unrelenting headaches for 6 years. And after her second water fast, she was pain-free. And when you first feed people after the water fast, it's very carefully refeeding, because for every day you water fast, you need half as much time to refeed. So if you do a 10-day water fast, you can't go home. You need to stay at least 5 more days to refeed. But when people come off the water fast, usually the first thing they get, I can't remember the order, if it's broth first and then watermelon chunks or juice, but very, very light stuff. So you're not getting like bread and nuts, and you're getting, you're getting lighter food. Even grains and beans will be later, but you'll get things like, fruits and vegetables. And so steamed zucchini is one of the first foods they get. And so we're making our rounds, and I was delivering the steamed zucchini to somebody who had just broken their fast. And it wasn't even a long fast. And when you get that first food after a fast, it doesn't even matter what it is. It's like manna from heaven. And so people that struggle with food addictions, it really helps what's called taste neuroadaptation, because I love going there, because it's not like I eat unhealthy, but I'm not perfect. I don't eat oil ever, but there's condiments that have salt, and I'll eat things that Dr. Goldhammer would think are not good. But then when you go there and you eat that food, it's like, your taste buds are reborn. And plus you have community there, because all the doctors that work there are on this page, and they're medical doctors, and it's just so fun, going to a doctor that gets it. And they have 3 lectures a day. And so I love to go there, because it's one of the only places I can bring my dog, legally, that you can't, not every, just so you know, not every single person can bring their dog. You have to clear it with them, because they only have 2 rooms that are dog friendly. So you have to, you got to call them in advance, because there's only the 2 dog rooms. But it's fun that I can bring my whole family, and my husband will go with me. And it's just, I love going there. It's in Santa Rosa. You can fly into the Charles Schultz Airport, and it's McDougall used to be there too. He had his program, and so it'd be fun. So we could program hop. I could say, hey, can I come to you today? Can I eat your food today? And it's just a fun thing to do because it's fun being around healthy people, or people that want to get healthy. So that's a place. Dr. Goldhammer very reluctantly endorsed this book, because there's ingredients in there like chocolate and peanut butter that he would not agree with or serve. But he said that he wanted me to call the book Desserts That Won't Kill You.
And he's right.
Yeah, they won't. And again, these books, one of the things I love about the book is the rating scale, from how calorically dense to how calorically dilute, and how sweet it is. So whether it's superbly sweet or subtly sweet, and how much fat it has. So you can pick and choose according to your unique needs and preferences, how much fat, how much sweetness you want in your recipe. Because we have this little grid. 1 strawberry is the least sweet, 2 is more sweet, and 3 strawberries are very sweet.
And it's a great way to quickly look at a recipe and gauge it. So last question, and then And I want to echo what AJ said, that many of us have been watching you for years. And
Oh, thank you.
I, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all you've done
Oh.
from the plant-based community. And I think everyone who's been enjoying the 3 recipes today would say the same. What is your next project? Where are you going next?
Oh, well, it's funny that you asked that on the day that I actually invited you to be a speaker in the next project. So what I'm working on now for the next 3 months is interviewing experts like Dr. Bascom for the 7th annual The Truth About Weight Loss Summit. I heard her talk at Plantrition. Even though she wasn't there, she still had a talk. I mean, she was there by video, but it was an amazing talk on something I never heard about, sarcobesity. I thought that was really interesting. And so it takes a while. Just, I always joke that interviewing doctors is like herding cats, because they're just, it's kind of hard to get them to, because some of them are like working doctors, they're not all just lifestyle doctors. They like Dr. Eric Walsh or Dr. Stefan Esser, they're in clinic all day, and, try to nail them down. It can be hard, but it's a labor of love that I've been doing 7 years. And so I'll be doing that October, November, and December. And then the summit will come out in January. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Any last questions for Chef AJ before we let her go and enjoy the rest
Clean
of
up
her
my
afternoon?
kitchen. Anybody that lives in Sacramento, you clean up, you eat for free. That's always been the deal.
And I'm sorry I missed you at the Plantrition conference. But
I know. I'll tell you, it was really cold this year. I mean, it was freezing cold, and the food was better last year at Palm Desert. And we're going back to Palm Desert next year. So those chefs were a little bit more skilled at the way of eating. But it was very good. It was still very good.
Then I look forward to seeing you there next year.
Thanks. Look forward to seeing all of you here and there. I'm on YouTube, but only about once a week now instead of every day.
And if anyone, a lot of people already have your book. Some are going to go out and buy it. But if they want to purchase it, or if they want to look for some of the products that you recommend, where can they go and find out more information?
Yeah, thanks. My name, Chef AJ. I'd go to chefaj.com, and there should be links to where you can get the book either on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or even a personalized signed copy at a local small independent bookstore here. So yeah, just Chef AJ on pretty much all social medias except Instagram. It was taken, so I'm the real Chef AJ.
And Chef AJ, I'm going to end with a comment from Amy, which is that this was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all you do. And I also want to thank the community for joining us today. Look forward to having you back for your next cookbook, and encourage everyone to, when the course is released in January, please listen and learn from all of the amazing experts that
the summit is 100% free. There's a small, if you want to buy the recordings for life, yes, there's a small fee, but to watch it is absolutely free.
And that is priceless.
Yeah.
Chef AJ, thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you,
Vegan Gym community.
Everybody. Wishing you the best of health. Remember, you don't have to sacrifice your sweet tooth if you sweeten it with the fruit, the whole fruit, and nothing but the whole fruit.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.